1. My parents are divorced, have been since I was around 8 years old. Mom won custody of me, so I lived with her for the first 18 years of my life. When I was in 4th grade, my stepfather's work required us to move to the greater San Antonio area in Texas. We settled in a nice, fairly new house. I want to say that I have always believed in ghosts and various spiritual entities. My mother claims that we come from a long line of mediums. I don't know if I truly believe that, but it's fun to think about. The house we moved into was built in '08, and we moved in the summer of 2012. I want to say now, because this will be important later, the house never had a creepy vibe to it. I had never felt like there was someone with me when I was home alone. Any amount of spooky ambience just came from being a kid and being scared to be alone and various other I'm a scared little kid things. Fast forward to around 2017 or 2018. The memories of when this happened are fuzzy to me at best. My stepfather had gotten into motorcycle clubs and had been running one out of the little clubhouse they had installed out back. Anyway, the club members had a lot to drink and were headed home. Most of them had designated drivers, but it wasn't a big deal. Needless to say, one of the members had been riding his bike home drunk. I woke up and noticed my stepfather's mood was abnormal. Normally he's the stoic, almost I'm very badass type. But now he seemed more emotional. It turns out that the club member that had been riding home drunk got into a high-speed chase and unfortunately he crashed. He was gone before the EMS even got to him. Ever since his death, the ambience in the house changed completely. As a 16-year-old who had been living in this house for around 6 years, the feeling was almost alien. The biker was really close to my stepfather, and even to my mom, despite the fact that she didn't approve of the whole biker club lifestyle we had all been dragged into. He was near and dear to them, and to this day he remains in their thoughts. As a young adult, I just moved on, and we all had to. Though that's when things started happening. Objects around the house were misplaced. Every now and again, sounds around the house could be heard with no explanation. The first real experience that I could not explain was when my stepfather made me take the trash out one night. I hated leaving the house at night, it always freaked me out. I begrudgingly began at the door, trying to get it done as quickly as possible. I make it to the driveway and my mom's truck, a Nissan Titan, unlocks. The headlights illuminated the entire driveway and the cabin lights came on, revealing that nobody had been in the vehicle. I threw the trash bag in the dumpster and ran back inside. I figured my stepfather was just being a dick like usual and had been messing with the key fob to scare me. So I entered the house, looked him dead in the eye and asked, "Where's the keys to the truck?" He was confused initially, but then he pointed to the little table by the door. Sure enough, the key fob was in fact there. This is the only fob to this vehicle, and the way the living room is laid out would not allow for him to have left his seat, grabbed the fob, peered through the blinds, unlocked the truck, then run back to the table to leave it neatly where it was before, and then get back in his chair all in the short time I was outside. They didn't believe me, and I shared this with my mom years later, and she says she remembered that night and that my stepfather hadn't been trying to play a prank on me. My mom had a much more baffling experience about a year later. I had gotten a job and was working a closing shift. That left my mom and stepfather in the house watching TV in the living room. There's a hallway from the living room that connects it to the garage and the master bedroom. My mom had decorated it with a few of those live, laugh, love canvas paintings and other suburban white mother mantras. My mom said she had been watching the TV from the couch when she looked over at this hallway. To her horror, one of these canvas paintings had come off the wall. But it hadn't just fallen over, it had lifted itself off the wall, stayed stationary in the middle of the hallway for a good second or two, and then fell straight onto the ground. My mom still has no explanation for this, and I'm still super bummed I missed seeing it. My last experience in that house happened after I graduated, and was visiting my mom for Thanksgiving. I went to take a shower, as I'd been driving since early in the morning, and hadn't showered when I woke up. I placed all my clean clothes on the toilet seat and placed my phone on the counter next to the sink. It's important to note that my phone had a case on it. It was one of those unnecessarily grippy rubber backs to it. It was so bad that getting it into a pocket was an absolute chore because it doesn't just slide into the pocket. It just grips every bit of fabric it can. I stripped down, put all my dirty clothes on the ground under the sink counter. As I'm in the shower, I hear the sound of my phone falling to the ground. I pulled the curtain and noticed that I didn't see my phone where I'd left it. I told myself that maybe I had left the phone on the edge of the counter where it could have tipped over. I knew this wasn't true, though. I'm good about taking care of my phone, and would never leave my phone in such a state. I got out and dried myself off, put my clean clothes on, and started looking for my phone. I looked under the counter my phone was sitting on, but it was nowhere in sight. That's when I checked underneath all of my dirty clothes, and I kid you not, my phone was there, underneath all my clothes. There is absolutely no way that it could have fallen off the counter and then shimmied its way underneath 5 articles of clothing. I know this because my mother and I tried to emulate this event to no avail. I have no way to explain it to this day. My mom sold the house a few years ago, and I've only had some minor experiences over the years since. I hope if he's still in that house that the new owners find him some peace. If not, I hope they can share their stories as well. 2. I had lots of paranormal experiences growing up, so I thought why not share. My house came haunted ever since it was built, so it wasn't the house, it was the land. It was a pretty big property, around 8 canals, 40,000 square feet, and around it was just fields. In the radius of around 1 kilometer, there was no population. There were around 6 to 7 people who worked on our property full-time to maintain it, and every single one of them had a story to tell. So, when the house was being built, construction workers used to see this weird animal that looked like a rabbit. When they went to catch it, it would turn into a rapper and fly away in the air and just vanish. Yes, a rapper. That animal would suddenly turn into an object and vanish. The story had been told to me by 3 different people over the years. When me and my siblings were little, my mother used to hear jingling of anklets at night. My father was always away on business trips, and helpers were not allowed inside the residential property, so we used to be alone. There was no one inside the house, and the jingling and sounds of people running around in the lounge were always heard. Things took a major turn when we grew older. One time a maid suddenly came over to my mother and asked her, "Yes, ma'am, what is it?" My mother gave her a confused look and she told her, "You called for me." My mother never did. She told her, "You were standing on the stairs staring at me, and when I asked, 'Do you want something, ma'am?' you just gestured to me with your hand to come to you." I completed my work and came. When my mother told her that I didn't call you, I was in my room the whole time, her face literally turned pale. Another time I was alone in my home, and I heard a door opening and then closing. Imagine those doors that have a door closer on them and are made of wood. They make a big sound when they're closed. When I heard it, I went downstairs to check, and the door was closed and everything was normal. I thought maybe it's air, which is sus because air can't open a wooden door. That was just me coping. I closed all the windows shut so there was no air coming from anywhere and went up. The moment I was on my last step, I again heard the sound of the door opening and then closing. Now I was beginning to realize this was some jinn-type stuff. I just stood there for like a minute, but again went downstairs anyway. I was in the middle of the stairs, and I saw that the door was just hanging in between. Like not closed, but not open. That was impossible, as the door had a door closer on it, and who would have opened it? All the doors and windows were locked, no human and no air. I just stood there a bit, frozen and taken aback. I looked at the door for like 5 seconds, and then boom, it closed itself with a bang. Like a person just shut the door hard. I just ran upstairs and increased the volume of the TV so I wouldn't hear this crap any longer. One time I was awoken by a large banging sound, like someone is banging the door very hard. The sound was coming from the lounge, which was a bit far from my room. It was around 2, 3 a.m. maybe? I went to check on it. I was surprised that no one else was woken up, as the sound was very loud, but I didn't give it much thought. When I reached the door, I was so shocked. The sound was coming from behind the door as if someone was banging on it, but as loud as the sound was, the door was not vibrating. It was still. Again, I stood there thinking, what the hell is happening? I was convinced it was a thief or something, so I peeked through the window that was beside the door, and there was no one there. The sound was still coming, but there was no one behind the door. It was a very strange experience, but as I said, we were experiencing these things since childhood. I just turned and went back to my room to sleep. There was this one thing that used to happen regularly. Whenever one of us was sleeping alone in a room at night, they used to pull the toe of our foot. I swear to God, this happened too many times. I lost count. Another thing that usually happened to my mother was that she was slapped on her leg. Even if we were in the room, she would wake up and angrily ask, "Did you just slap me?" I would sit there cluelessly, and then we would both give each other that knowing look and then go back to our work. And the strangest part is I used to get dreams about a strange type of darkness lingering in our house. One would say that my mind was just playing games on me, but hear me out. One time I had a dream that there were a bunch of children, between the ages of 3 and 6, sitting in our lawn eating raw meat. The kids' clothes and bodies were very dirty, and they were just devouring the meat they had in their hands. I woke up feeling weird, but didn't say anything. I went to the lawn to get some fresh air, and saw that there was a trash bag there. I didn't give it much thought, and went to the main lounge to eat breakfast. As I was eating, my mother came to me looking a bit uncomfortable, and told me that when she woke up for fasher, she found a cluster of meat in our lawn. Like, take a bunch of meat and press it tightly together. That's when I told her about my dream, and both of us were just speechless. I lived in that house for 13 years before moving to another city. 3. So over the course of my life, I've had experiences that I cannot explain, but I want to try to understand. I posted on Our Paranormal recently, and someone said that some of my experiences might be more spiritual than paranormal. I do believe I have something watching over me, or that maybe I have some kind of spiritual energy that helps protect me. I'm not super religious, but I have a relationship with God. I did not when I was younger. A few things have happened in my life that could have been really bad if it weren't for whatever force is around me. So I wanted to come share some of my experiences and get some opinions. Are they spiritual in nature? Is there any danger? Could a younger me have made these up, etc.? 1. This might have been around 20-ish years ago. I was standing in my grandparents' apartment that connected to our house, and outside the window I briefly saw what I thought was a skull made of light. Went away when I blinked. 2. This one was around the same time as the previous one, different house though. I was laying awake after I had gone to bed. I swore I saw a being made of light standing in my doorway, but they never cast any light onto anything. Once again, when I blinked, they were gone. 3. A big one was around late middle school. I got into an argument with my dad over cleaning my room, and he eventually told me to go rake the leaves outside. I was angry and decided to go sit in my room. After settling down a little, I was going to go outside and do what I was told. But then a picture book I hadn't read in a long time was on the floor, and it caught my eye. In hindsight, I had cleaned that part of my floor up, so I don't know how it got there, but I didn't care enough at the time to think it was weird, and I sat down to read it. Shortly after, we hear a loud crash outside. A teenager was making a turn while messing with his radio, and didn't see my dad's car that was parked in the street, rear-ending it, and sending it maybe 10 feet away from where it was parked, with the e-brake on. Had I been out there raking leaves from the driveway, I like to start with the curbs and make a wall of leaves at the end of the drive, I'm pretty sure I would have gotten hit. I think that was also when my adult consciousness was born. Felt so bad being angry at my dad, thinking I had willed this whole thing into existence through my anger. 4. This is one of the most recent regarding the first 3. This might not be credible, but I did a tarot reading with a friend over Discord, but a card shot out of her deck after she had shuffled it. It was a spear, or owl card or something similar. It was a while ago. And she thought that perhaps Athena was trying to talk and connect with me. Something about her deck not having a sword card, and that the spear was the closest, and that swords and owls were signs of Athena. but hadn't tried till now because she was worried about scaring me. This one is probably the most far-fetched experience I've had. Now, these experiences are more geared toward paranormal, but I will still share them. I think some elements of these situations have a bit of a spiritual element to them. I think the guardian and spiritual energy I have has helped protect me from worse happenings. 1. I used to live in one of the most haunted cities in the US. In my first apartment complex, there were for sure some spooky things wandering around. I lived in and around some of the most haunted areas for Savannah. None of them were malicious, or at the very least they stayed away from me, but you could tell. When I first went to my apartment, I burned some lavender incense because I had read that it's like food for spirits, and talked out loud that I am just passing through. I'm not here to take anything or make anyone leave, and would like to coexist for the duration of my lease. I think it worked, because the spooky things were kept to a minimum. The occasional flicker of light that I chalked up to just being old wiring in the place to keep myself sane, and creaky floorboards when no one was walking around. I also had my childhood cat with me, so that might have been some of the reason. 2. Same time as the former, but different place. The second place I stayed for sure had a spirit there. Previous people who were there said things would go flying out of the room, and that some of them had seen it hit with things too. I did sort of the same thing I did before, lit some incense and let the spirit know I was only passing through, and that I meant no harm. Had like one encounter with it. I think something moved slightly, and I said aloud, "You're scaring me, please stop," and it stopped. Also had my cat with me here. 3. Yesterday I noticed my string lights were flickering, a single flicker, maybe 4 or so minutes between each flicker. I don't think there was a pattern, but I didn't pay much attention to it. Electronics do that sometimes, right? But then my friend told me her door straight up opened and closed several times. Though it just might be the air pressure change, because multiple windows were open across the house. Thing is, her door properly closes, so either she forgot to close it, or there's something else. She said that it's been around a long while and doesn't seem malicious. Things like this freak me out something bad. I can't fully understand it, and that scares me. So I did what I had the last few times and said I don't want any trouble and to please not spook me. I hope this works. 4. My boyfriend and I recently moved into a house about a month ago. I have tried researching the history of the house, and I haven't been able to find much on it. The house has one main floor and a fully done basement. Everyone who has stepped foot in the house has mentioned a dislike for the basement, specifically the back bedroom, the last on the left down the hall, saying the vibes are weird and they feel like they are being watched, and I can't help but agree. Every time I go down there, I feel someone or something is watching me. About 3 weeks ago, we had our first paranormal experience. We both stayed the night there for the first time since buying it. We were sitting in the living room and heard someone coughing from the basement. At first, we wrote it off as the house settling, but every once in a while, we would hear it again, as well as random creaks and groans. Eventually, we decided to check it out, and found that the door in the back was open, which is odd, because we keep all the doors closed in the basement all the time. We decided to leave it alone for now and went upstairs to go to bed. That night my boyfriend woke up screaming, saying someone was in the corner. Nobody was there. After that, neither of us could sleep well, and when we did fall asleep, it was uneasy and fitful. Everything was relatively normal after that, except for the odd creak and groan here or there. But that could be anything, right? We brought out our cat as well, and she has been acting completely different than usual. It's like her whole personality has changed and she is an entirely new cat. I keep finding her peering around corners and staring at me anytime I'm alone, something she has never done before, and has been making me very uncomfortable. A few nights ago, his parents moved in. They took the upstairs bedroom, and my boyfriend and I went to stay in the basement. Not the uneasy bedroom, but the bedroom it shares a wall with. Before going to bed the first night in the basement, we watched a movie. While watching it, we kept hearing things falling and moving from down the hall. We chose to ignore it, until the lights started flickering before going out completely. We checked the neighbors, and nobody else had experienced the outage, just us. The power flicked back on after about a minute and never went off again, but after it came back on, the vibes were entirely different. I didn't just feel like I was being watched anymore, I felt like something wanted me gone, wanted me dead. That night I had a very bad night of sleep. My dreams were all hyper-realistic and had graphic, violent ways of me dying. Dreams of something grabbing me in the shower, a woman watching us from the ceiling, and a man standing in the corner of the room. When I woke up, my nails were bloody and I had scratches all over my back and chest. I have never hurt myself in my sleep before. I have always been a peaceful sleeper. Last night I couldn't sleep. My dreams were graphic again, people hurting me. But it was always the same two, a woman and a man. I kept hearing whispers, but when I paused my music or focused on them, the silence would be so loud my ears would ring. Usually I went back to focusing on anything but the noise. This morning I woke up with the letter T scratched onto my chest, and my nails bloody again. I kept hearing knocking and rustling from the wall we share the scary room with. I don't know what to do. I don't feel safe in that house. Everyone else feels the presence of something, but that something only seems to target me. Tonight I am staying with some friends because I need to get out of the house. I feel like the paranoia is killing me. Does anyone have any advice on what is going on or what to do? 5. The below-mentioned incidents are not any imaginary story. The following were really experienced by me and my family between 2019 to 2021. My family, my mom and younger sister, shifted from our hometown to the city for the final couple of years of my college. Before that, I was staying at the college hostel. We rented an apartment. As soon as we shifted, I parted ways with my dorm and went to college from my rental house through the college bus. My sister continued her high school here, near our house. The house was pretty small, a living room, a kitchen, a bathroom at the end of the living room, and 2 bedrooms opposite to each other. On the first night, we 3 were sleeping in the living room, and my sister woke both me and my mom up early in the morning, around 5:30 a.m. Her voice panicked as she said that she saw someone standing in the corridor in front of the bathroom. Me and my mom brushed it off, saying that it's nothing but a bad nightmare. Later that day, she insisted that she saw some shadow figure about 7 feet tall. My mom just told her to pray before going to sleep. A few months went by, we started to settle in, and nothing creepy happened, but we started to argue a lot among each other. Even over the smallest of things. We have argued before, but the arguments that happened in this house were pretty intense, and it took weeks to calm things down. One day my sister was combing her hair in front of a mirror in one of the bedrooms, and she saw the face of an old woman just above her head in the mirror's reflection. That scared her a lot as she dropped her comb and ran to the living room where me and my mother were watching TV. She told us what she saw. This time we started to have doubts about the house. We told this to our dad, who was working abroad, and he told us to start searching for a new house. At this time there was just 1 more year to complete our studies. We searched our best to find a new house, but all went in vain. One day I took my mom to a nearby supermarket to buy some groceries, leaving my sister alone at the house. It was broad daylight, and she agreed to be at the house, and we promised her that we would be back in 10 minutes. She was on the sofa watching TV, and suddenly the power went off. The TV screen went black. My sister saw her reflection on the TV, and also in the reflection, that same 7-foot-tall shadow figure was sitting beside her. She did not dare to turn her head, but thank God we both returned in time and opened the door. Then the shadow figure vanished. Then the lockdown was imposed due to COVID, and we had online classes. So we did not leave our house at any point for a few months, and made it more difficult for us to find a new house. Then one day, me and my sister were watching TV in the living room. My mom went to the bathroom. My mobile phone rang, which was in the bedroom, so I went from the living room to the bedroom to pick up my phone, and suddenly my sister starts to shout, "Mom! Mom!" My mom comes out of the bathroom and I rush back to see what happened. My sister, with shivers all over her body and voice, said that she saw the 7-foot-tall shadow figure move swiftly across the room that I had just entered to the other room. Then we started to pray a lot every day, and the creepy things started to slow down. I completed my college and my sister completed her high school. We didn't find a new house, so we went back to our hometown and pledged to never return again. I know a lot of these incidents seem cinematic, but this is the truth. I didn't make anything up or add anything to. I wrote it just as it happened. Now my sister and I left the country and now live in Dubai. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Paranormal Stories, episode 419. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. If you would like to support the channel, there's a few ways you can do that. You can sign up for my Patreon page, which is linked in the description. There's also a link in there to the Hellfreezer merchandise store. You can get yourself some lovely Hellfreezer merchandise. You can also leave tips for this or any other video by clicking on the heart with the $sign underneath. Of course, sharing videos with friends and family is also super duper helpful. The more eyes we can get in front of the videos, the more likes and things we can get on them, the more YouTube then recommends them to other people. That's just how the system here works. Okay, no more business today, so let's move on to Hellfreezer's question of the day. And today's question is, excluding this one, obviously, what is your favorite paranormal-related YouTube channel? Feel free to recommend them in a comment below. Mine right now is the Center of Inquiry because they take a skeptical but not dismissive approach. They have a number of people working there, but I quite like the videos done by the guy Kenny, a fellow with, I think he's currently got a beard. And the video they recently put up was where they went to the Monroe House in Hartford City in Indiana. Then they investigated claims that there were ghosts and demons and such abound in the house. And they were able to essentially, look at things with a more analytical ways, saying, well, there could be things, but there's also these reasonable explanations for how certain things happened that other people have just took at face value and not investigated further. As I do like to keep an open mind about these things, I do have a fervent hope that the supernatural is real, but I'm also very skeptical of a lot of things that are presented as fact. I don't think it's a bad thing to poke at facts to see if they hold up. Let me know what you think in a comment below. And before we go, let's take a look at the answer of the day from a previous video. This one comes from Paranormal Stories 417, and it was about bad habits in the kitchen you should stop. Today's answer comes from Dust Warden. Lining baking pans with aluminium foil instead of just washing them after each use. I do that too. It's so wasteful, but removing that step makes me much more likely to actually cook something. Yeah, my rationale is some of the baking pans are kind of old and it just feels better if I do that. Well, the one time I do it that is, I think is sort of justified, is if I'm making tablet, which is a Scottish confection made of sugar, butter, condensed milk and vanilla. You could probably add other things, but those are the main ingredients. So it's mostly sugar, and it's very, very yummy. And if you're making that just for the convenience of it, I will line the tray with tin foil. You don't need to butter it or anything. That would just make it too greasy. So that when it sets, I can just lift it out of the tray and I don't have to worry about getting all that sugar off the tray. So that's one time when it's justified, although I have done it with other trays when they've been a bit older, just for the sake of keeping things neat, because I feel it's neater. But you're right, it's less wasteful just to clean things. Thank you very much for your answer, Dust Warden. And with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourself.